Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today we'll be reviewing the Gachatha wash processed Kenya from Tim Wendelboe. And there's the bag right there. And Tim Wendelboe, based out of Oslo, Norway. And believe it or not, this is our first ever full bag review of one of Tim Wendelboe's coffees. They have appeared on this channel 4 times before during our Cafe Box Advent calendar, but despite the fact that they're arguably the most well-known Norwegian coffee roaster, this is the first time I'd ever seen any local coffee shop carrying their coffee, and given just how well-known and prestigious they are, I definitely wanted to take that opportunity to finally review a full bag of their coffee, as they've also been on my personal list for a full bag review as well. So I'm looking forward to finally getting this opportunity, as this right here is day 25. And Tim Wendelboe does have a brew guide on their website, and it is a 15.4 to 1 water to coffee ratio. And they don't have a specific temperature, however it sounds like it's just off of the boil. Recipe I went with was our standard recipe, a 16 to 1 water to coffee ratio brewed at 205 degrees Fahrenheit, and I liked it best through the Chemex, which indicates a more medium grind. Tim Wendelboe is a Nordic light for the roast profile. Those things out of the way, let's go ahead and start discussing this coffee. Day 12, first impression, and I want to say something first before we go through the days in this coffee. They do have listed on the back of their coffee, their bag, that says best consumed within the 3-week period. So we did start this a little earlier than normal. I wanted to follow Tim Wendelboe's guide as much as possible, even though I felt from the start that maybe it was better to extend this review out a little further. We'll get into that a little later, but day 12 is where we opted to start this one, and it was quite traditional Kenyan in the sense that it was skewing very strong on the red components. Most notable factor in the cup was an extra bit of herbality. Listed hibiscus wasn't necessarily fitting for the entire cup's herbality because it was herbal in so many more aspects than just the straightforward hibiscus sense. It left a solid first impression and left me interested at the very least, so it was going to be interesting to see where it went from this point. Day 13, better day through the Chemex, as I couldn't help but notice just how unusually thick this body in this coffee was, especially for it being brewed through the Chemex. The cup is quite robust and flavorful, and that's the second takeaway I have, is this coffee did not lack flavor by any means. It was skewing on the slightly sweeter side of the red fruits, so I really enjoyed this coffee on this day. Day 15, same consistency within the cup, as it's both robust and flavorful. It's very high on the herbals, which isn't too surprising. I've heard that Tim Wendelboe really likes his herbal coffees, so that would make a lot of sense. It's maintaining the heavier body as well, especially brewed through the V60. Regardless of which brew method I used, the body just came out really noticeable, distinct, and thicker than anticipated. Day 17, another V60 day, and the cup just continues feeling really thick. There's been an increase in the herbality to the cup, as it can best be described as a wide array of herbal red flavors. Slightly savory too, a little bit more robust, and I was going to adjust on this day. So this day 17 mark, I remember it very well. It's when we opted for Tim Wendelboe's recipe, so it was a higher concentration and a higher temperature, and that really did bring out a lot of the acidity and a lot of those stronger savory red aspects, most distinctly that infamous tea tomato word that was in this cup of coffee. So 17 wasn't necessarily my favorite today, and that's why I wanted to dilute this coffee down. Given that it was already flavorful and robust to begin with, I didn't necessarily feel the need to push it any further, so our standard recipe seemed to work a little better for me with this coffee. Day 18, there's a darker sweetness to the cup and consistency within that body itself, and I know I keep going back to that body, but it was one of the most standout and unique aspects to this coffee. Heavy on the herbality yet again when brewed with Tim Wendelboe's recipe through the Chemex as well. I'm saying I just didn't particularly like the more concentrated aspects of Tim Wendelboe's recipe. Definitely a bit savory in this sense as well. Day 20, one more day through the Chemex at this point, and while the savoriness does continue to dominate the cup with the herbality, then the body continues to remain thick as well, but this Chemex seems to be just sharpening the cup in general. It seems to be focusing it, and I'm seeing a nice increase in the overall sweetness of it. Most distinctly, it kind of came off as this candied red berry, which was a really pleasant and positive attribute to this coffee. Day 22, final notes we have, there's an abundance of herbal florality with the essential dark red characteristics to it. Bright tart berries, I was thinking cranberry on this day in the finish, and it comes off a little bit more clean and even than most Kenyans, which I really enjoyed. While the acidity is bright, it's not overbearing. While the body is heavy, it's not like too heavy, so it's just slightly unique and quite even for it being a Kenyan coffee for me. All right, let's go ahead and put up the tasting wheel so you can see what we're getting. I feel like at this point we've probably made about 300 or so tasting wheels, and I know none of them look like this, so let's run through this tasting wheel as we have a lot of level 4s. Savoriness, level 4. Yes, but here on day 25, this coffee is definitely toned down in terms of the savoriness. I would bump this down to a level 3. I've seen dramatic improvement in this cup since the last time we brewed it, but I'd also seen improvement from day 18 onward. So that's why I didn't necessarily like the concept of finishing this at the 3-week mark. I even went over slightly with day 22. But I feel like the best days of this coffee are either now or slightly ahead of it, so I would have liked to have extended this review out a little more. Body level 4, I've been highlighting that a lot. This body is just weirdly thicker than anticipated, but it's a very thick body. This tasting wheel was made with the Chemex and it still came out at a level 4. That just kind of indicates just how heavy the body was. Cleanliness, level 4. Anytime you score a level 4 cleanliness for a Kenyan coffee, you're doing an excellent job. So I love the cleanliness being there at that mark. Sweetness, level 4. It's actually really sweet. It's the sweetest I've experienced today when compared to the other days of this coffee. There were times it was bordering on that higher level 3 mark, but today it's most definitely justified at the level 4. I really enjoy the sweetness in this cup. Acidity, level 4. Yes, it's a Nordic Kenyan coffee. If it didn't reach a level 4, then I probably messed up at some point. Florality, level 4. I would say was the most consistently dominant aspect to this coffee. It was that hibiscus that they had listed on here. Quite herbal and flavorful, quite distinct in this cup of coffee. But it did share the spotlight with the red berries, so that's why the berry fruit, of course, being in a level 4. Very classic Kenyan characteristics to a coffee, but they're also definitely justified there. So, as mentioned, it's a very flavorful cup of coffee. It makes it very easy to pick out those 2 attributes. Level 3 on the finish, I kind of mentioned that it's very even, so it doesn't have the overly dominant acidity that I might have been expecting from this coffee to kind of linger eternally. So I really like it at that level 3 mark. And I mean, everything else is kind of toned down at a level 2 mark. Spice, I would tone that down to a level 2, as mentioned. This cup of coffee seems to be cleaning up and heightening the sweetness as it ages. So I'm just saying improvements in this tasting wheel from this point going forward. So I would say that the tasting wheel would actually look slightly better today than it did the day I made it. Alright, so my overall thoughts and impressions of this coffee. I am a little bummed that we did finish this review earlier than expected. I really would have liked to have seen where this coffee would have gone. Maybe day 25, day 28, and maybe even in the 30s to see just how much improvement we could have experienced from this coffee. But it does kind of demonstrate my overall thoughts on Tim Wendelboe, because Tim Wendelboe does a really good job of taking coffees that might not necessarily be my type of coffee to begin with, and making me enjoy them a little bit more than expected. That's the experience I've had with all of the coffees I've tried before, and that's definitely the case with this one right here, as while initially it wasn't necessarily my profile and the herbality not something I necessarily enjoy, by the end I was really appreciating the sweetness I was coming from this coffee, especially the cleanliness. You get those 2 marks pretty high, then I'm going to enjoy your coffee, and I think that's where things are getting unfortunate. Had I had a cup of coffee like this maybe 3 or 4 more times, I could have easily seen this one finishing at the very least as an honorable mention coffee. But given that I finished it a little early and most of the days I had experienced this coffee, it was a little bit more on the savory herbal side of things. It was just a really, really good cup of coffee, but probably not going to make my honorable mentions list. Left a pretty positive impression though. I would really like to review some more of Tim Wendelboe's coffees in the future, assuming I'll be able to get my hands on them. Type of person I would suggest this coffee to. Kenyans are always tricky to suggest to people because I feel like the Kenyans I like are the Kenyans that most people don't like, and vice versa. So if you're like me and you don't like the overly savory tomato-like Kenyans, then I feel like this one's a really good fit for you. It had great candied sweetness to it, most distinctly the candied red berries, which were the best aspect for me. Really enjoyed that part of this coffee. And it also did come off cleaner, so if you're kind of opposed to the more tomato savory Kenyans, then I feel like this is a pretty good fit for you. But for the most part, I think I'll leave this review at that. If you've by chance had an opportunity to try this coffee, I would love to know your thoughts and impressions of it as well. If you're enjoying the content, give this video a like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. This right here has been a review of the Gachatha Wash Processed Kenya from Tim Wendelboe. Thank you for watching.